Hello, my name is Lieutenant Chiarello, and I'm with the York-Poquoson Sheriff's Office, Court Security Civil Process Division. In this video, I'll be discussing the eviction process. Eviction is the process by which a landlord obtains possession of the rental property by entering into a lawsuit directing the tenant or tenants to leave the property and pay back any rent, damage claims, and possibly court costs. The following are steps a landlord must take in the eviction process. Step 1. There are two different types of notices. A 14-day notice to pay or quit letter for money-related issues. This notice is used for failure to pay rent. The landlord gives the tenant a written notice that must be paid within 14 days of service date, or the tenant must vacate the premises. Beginning on July 1st, 2027, a written statement of charges, payments, late charges, attorney fees, costs, and any other charges or money owed over the course of the tenancy or the past 12 months, whichever is shorter, should be included within that notice. The second is a 30-day letter for contractual issues. This notice applies if the tenant is in violation of the lease or rental agreement, and if the tenant does not remedy those issues after proper notice has been given, the landlord then gives the tenant a written notice to vacate the premises within 30 days. If the tenant does not comply with any of the notices, the landlord brings proof of the notices to the General District Court Clerk's office to obtain a summons for an unlawful detainer. The clerk issues a summons for an unlawful detainer and assigns a date when the landlord and the tenant have an opportunity to appear before a judge. Once the judge rules in favor of the plaintiff, the landlord can then go to the General District Clerk's office and apply for a writ of eviction. After the request for the eviction has been filed and a 10-day appeal period has passed, the court will send the writ of eviction to the sheriff's office to be executed. The sheriff's office has 15 days, not to exceed 30 days, from the date the court issued the writ to execute it. The sheriff's office will contact the plaintiff to schedule the date and time of the eviction. Once the eviction date has been set with the plaintiff, the sheriff's office serves the defendant with a notice giving them a minimum of 72 hours prior to the scheduled eviction to vacate the property. There are two types of evictions. The first is a full eviction or a move out. With this, the plaintiff must provide a key to the premises or a locksmith upon the day of eviction. If the defendant is still staying in the residence with their property, the plaintiff must provide enough adults deemed necessary to the sheriff's office to execute the move-out eviction. The second type of eviction is a 24-hour lock change eviction, or lockout. This is the most common used eviction because it's far less costly than a full eviction. On eviction day, the plaintiff must provide a locksmith to change all the locks on exterior entrances to the dwelling. The dwelling becomes a storage facility for the defendant's property for the next 24 hours. The plaintiff must grant the defendant reasonable access to remove his or her property during the 24-hour period. The defendant cannot stay in the dwelling overnight. At the end of the 24-hour period, any property left in the dwelling goes into possession of the plaintiff, who may sell or destroy it. If the defendant remains on the property or returns to the property after the 24-hour period expires, without the landlord's consent, the defendant is trespassing. At that point, the involvement of the sheriff's office would be complete and the property would be rightfully and lawfully handed over to the person named on the writ as the plaintiff. In cases where family members have allowed another family member or friend to stay with them, and there is no lease, no rent, or other forms of contribution to the living arrangements, that person is considered a gratuitous occupant and not a tenant. Therefore, they can be considered to be trespassing after having been asked to leave. If you need further assistance, you can call the sheriff's office at 757-890-4190. Or you can go to the sheriff's office website at www.yorkcounty.gov/sheriff. If you're a struggling tenant, call the United Way of the Virginia Peninsula's Community Assistance Network at 757-229-2222.